In the next panel, we'll talk about bridging this gap between legacy defense and emerging tech. I want to invite Yonatan Mandelbaum, partner at TLV Partners.
And everybody else.
Okay. Also, we'll be joining here Rotem, Abeles, co-founder and CPO at Airis Labs. Assaf, Monsa, Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at D-Fend Solutions. And Ray Gopher?
No. Avner,
And also Avner, Bendheim. Thank you.
All right, everybody. First of all, there's two things that I want to say before we start. Three things, I guess. First of all, I want to change the energy a little bit in this room, try to get it a little bit more active. I'm going to be an annoying moderator. I'm telling you already right now. And if the audience, if you have a question, I don't really care. We're going to talk to each other. You guys can listen, and hopefully it's going to be interesting. That's number one. Number two, all the founders that are here, and all the founders that are here specifically, thank you very much. Founders are the most busy people in the world, and the fact that you guys are sitting here at a conference for a very long time, there's a lot of other things that I'm sure you need to get to, lots of things piling up on the inbox and Slack, so thank you very much for that. The third thing, really quickly about myself, I'm a partner at TLV Partners. We're a local VC. We manage about $1 billion. We invest across the board from a technology standpoint, mostly at early stage. We've done a few defense investments, but not a ton, because it's a relatively new ecosystem from a VC perspective, despite the fact that you had a whole VC panel who claimed to invest in defense, but they don't really, and we're going to talk about that. So let's start with quickly. We're going to get into this. We're going to be a little bit quickly. Everybody, pitch yourself. What's your background? Give a 30-second explanation of your company, and then we're going to go right into it.
We switched it up here for them, so they have to analyze which side you're on. Go ahead.
All right, so my name is Assaf Monsa. I'm CTO and co-founder of D-Fend Solutions. We were mentioned by Nir, so thank you. What we do is counter UAS, counter drone systems. Our approach is to take over a drone, a rogue drone, through cyber RF, which is very unique. We don't throw anything at it. We don't try to jam it. We are taking control of that and land in a safe place, and thus enabling continuity of all operations, including other drone operations.
And congrats. Last week you announced a $31 million fundraise, so congratulations on that.
Absolutely. That was from IGP, and that was great.
Fantastic.
Hello, my name is Rotem Abeles. I was an intelligence officer for 9 years, still doing reserve duty as a major in the Israeli SOCOM. And we built Airis Labs to turn unstructured video data into structured intelligence.
Good afternoon, everyone. Avner, Bendheim, CEO of Tip&Cue. I started to get into defense, like most people here, at the warfighter side. As a military pilot, seeing the operational gaps in the closed domain and a few thousand miles away as well, where the gaps are a little bit different. Then I was lucky to serve a few years in the headquarters of the Air Force. I eventually ran the Signal Intelligence Department and the space program for the Air Force, so multi-billion-dollar projects. And you get to see a little bit of a different perspective also, not only the operational gaps, but the technological constraints and the technical constraints. I founded Tip&Cue because across all those different roles I did in the military, I saw this huge shift where the most critical domain in modern warfare is the spectrum. It doesn't matter what operational capability you have at the end. You could have a $4 billion satellite, but that's easily jammed or spoofed, and it's worth nothing when that happens. And Tip&Cue provides the next generation of spectrum intelligence.
Amazing. So I think it's really interesting also for the audience to understand that we have three completely different companies at completely different stages. All of you actually do have government contracts. I won't get into that specifically, but it's also impressive to see a pre-seed company, a Series A company, and a Series C. And a Series C company, all on the stage doing different things. And I think it's important to understand, I think, a little bit where the defense tech ecosystem sits today. So the first thing that I want to ask is that this is obviously the first year that we've had this conference, because nobody would have showed up at a defense tech conference if it was a year or 2 years ago. And so the question is, all three of you started companies in the space before that, though. So even though it wasn't necessarily a hyped up market, what led each of you to start a company in the space?
Same way. All right. So we started our company about almost 8 years ago. So it was totally not trendy, and it was a real question for us whether or not that would be the right market to go into. However, we did recognize the threat of the drones it was the start of proliferation of the drone market, and we saw that threat everywhere. It's both in defense and both in civilian markets. Could be airports, could be prisons, could be critical infrastructures, could be police, could be borders, could be obviously armies, as we all saw here. And we saw all that potential in front of our eyes, and we said, well, we know how to approach that, we know how to start solving that, and the huge opportunity. So the fact that some of our verticals are pure defense did not deter us from that. And it was cool to see drones stop in mid-air and land in your designated place. So all that combination.
So we started Airis March of last year, March 23. And on the premise of what we saw in the world, in the Ukraine, and also here in Israel, we had Lion's Den, Gova Arayot, for those who remember. Basically seeing the explosion of user-generated content, specifically videos, that is happening when coming from the intelligence community, we know that current tools were basically underprepared for this. And we basically saw an unmet need. We saw the need from our experience, and we knew that it's unmet. And we actually started Airis without a technical co-founder. So starting from the problem, not from the solution.
I think even the founders here today are founding these companies not because they think it's cool. I think at a personal level, in this country, in this area, in the world, a lot of these founders saw the problem firsthand. Either something that happened to them, to a friend, or ammunition that missed for some reason, or a solution that could be better. For me, when founding Tip&Cue, I realized that even though I know the tech, all the primes, and seeing this problem become the #1 problem in modern warfare, the closest answer was only 6 years away with current technology and the pace that the primes were running and the kind of solutions that they were creating. And I believe that we could do this differently, create a rapid solution for spectrum dominance, and hit the ground running.
Amazing. So I want to get into a little bit about the title of the panel, which is officially bridging the gap between legacy defense or legacy systems and emerging technology. And I actually want to really disagree with somebody that spoke previously on one of the panels, I was listening, that said that they have a lot of respect for what the primes are able to do today, that they are good at certain things. I actually don't think that's true. I think they've been benefited a lot from a monopolistic nature of the way that the defense ecosystem has been set up. They mostly are slow moving, including the ones in Israel. So if anybody's out there, I love you. I think there's a massive opportunity for startups to actually take advantage of that. However, primes are something that you have to deal with. They're there. And so how do you deal with primes? Are they people that you want to collaborate with? Is it someone that you're trying to circumvent? Is it a potential channel for sales? How do each of you approach the primes?
Okay, so all of the above and more, and there are sometimes competitors. So you can see them everywhere, wherever defense is being, whenever there is a business involving defense is done. And they sometimes get the really, really big contracts, and the only way that you can sell into that contract is through the primes. We need to build a whole suite of solution around a very big problem where you are a startup and you're doing only some of that, or just one case of one of the use cases of that. So in that sense, whenever that is the need, then you need to work with the prime. However, being disruptive and taking a different angle, which startups could do really, really fast as compared to primes, we could also get right to the bottom of the need and right to the end customers who were looking for a solution, couldn't find them in years to come, like Avner said. And when you come with that, you could bring fairy dust. They will be interested in that, and that's an opening for you. Then the primes, if they take over that deal, they will be the vehicle for you to sell. So that's another place where we see prime. Obviously, there are also small contracts where you can just come as a standalone if you give a good enough solution.
How many of you know what is a program of record? Okay. Do you know that the prime for the program of record can outsource 70% of that budget using task orders, right? So I think that's like if you need to remember one thing from what I'm going to say today, that's that. So primes, yes, they can be competitors. They can also be an exit opportunity. But most and foremost, they're your way to get into those big budgets.
I'm going to be the third one here saying that all three, but the perspective that's most interesting in my mind is how you work together with these primes and understanding that you need to, because at the end of the day, the DoD does not want capabilities that are in silos. And they have multiple dispersed sensors and capabilities, tanks built by one prime, aircrafts and satellites built by another prime. And the best capabilities out there need to be with collaboration, and the sensors need to be integrated. It's something called multi-domain warfare, or a term where connecting every sensor to every shooter. And this is only, you're only able to do this if you integrate with primes. And then you see a lot of these new contracts, even with the larger primes, working together, having multiple subs on these large multi-domain contracts, and I think it's a necessity.
I'm really glad that Rotem, you brought programs of record, and I'll specifically ask you, Avner, because I know you have interesting thoughts on this. As investors, if you guys have interacted with investors, you know that we pretend to be smart, but we don't actually know that much about anything. And I think one of the things that us investors like to say is that, oh, if we're investing in a defense company, you have to be a program of record at some point. Do you think that that's true, or do you think that that's not true?
I think one thing about the term program of records, you could be a program of records selling printers to the military. So it's not a goal at the end to get to a program of records. It's something that you want to do. You want to grow through the valley of death of lower TRL levels and get from those multi-million-dollar contracts to those $100-million contracts when you're the prime. But it's not a goal within itself. You want to be inventing and developing and deploying breakthrough technology that the U.S. DoD or that Israel can't fight without, or will allow them to win the next war, whether it's through a program of records or other kind of contracts.
And Assaf, I'll switch to you, Mavar Chad, as they say, to a completely different topic. But that's, you've been a company that's been around for 8 years. You obviously are operational, have systems in the battlefield as well. How do you think about another investor trope that's out there, right? That we want to invest in platform companies. We don't want to invest in single product companies. How do you think about that when building your company? Is that something that you have in mind, trying to expand the product offerings into becoming a platform? Or are you honestly just focused day to day on penetrating the market and building the best specific solution that you can?
Well, it's a kind of a long-term question, and I'll try to answer it shortly. When we started, we saw a problem, but we knew that just addressing that problem the way we saw it will get us that far. It could be a good opportunity for us, but at some point or the other, we'll need to look around the food chain and see how we go up and how we expand ourselves. Not only to become an investment opportunity for investors, but also to grow, because you can grow that much in one type of product, and then you'll need to find a way to expand. We did find out that the counter drone market is extremely deep, extremely wide, and we're still working on that very heavily. But as far as the food chain goes, we do expand. We do work with partners. We do integrate with primes. We do integrate with command control systems. They connect our sensor to our and other shooters, and vice versa. So in a way, we saw that we can expand and create a platform and connect to other platforms and grow through that. Having said that, we keep getting asked, so what's next? After you conquer all that, what's next? And the answer to that is, well, we have a whole lot of technology that can do a lot of things on similar areas. And we do communicate that to the investors that we're talking with, and I think that they see that as part of our potential.
Nice. So Rotem, I'll switch to you as well with another, I think, potential misconception, but maybe not a misconception, which is that if you're selling to governments, there should be or needs to be a hardware component. I think there's a saying out there as well, at least in the DoD in the US, that lethality is currency, and we won't necessarily be speaking about lethality, but we can speak about understanding how to procure physical systems versus software systems. Again, speaking about bridging legacy to innovation. Airis is a completely software company only, so how have you been addressing that potential challenge?
So first of all, you're not wrong, right? DoD in general knows how to buy nuts and bolts and projects, so labor cost, right? That's how the entire system is organized in terms of procurement. We see the DoD now moving towards, especially with this new wave of AI solutions, new contract vehicles that are faster. Tradewinds is one example for that. It's the CDAO vehicle to purchase software, mostly AI, in some kind of a marketplace. So it's getting there, right? And as everything, the DoD is a really big ship, and it takes time to move. But the money is starting to get there. We're talking about the Army is going to launch a $1 billion program for software and AI only. So, we see now, I would say that it's like, you start seeing this transition or the spillover. For example, Palantir, which is a software company, priming Titan, which is the Army Tzayad, right? And having Anduril as a subcontractor, which is pretty cool. And we're starting to see also pure software, budget lines.
Avner, anything to add, or Assaf?
Yeah, I think to succeed as a software company, you definitely need to put the hardware in the front of your mind and understand which C2 system you're integrating with hardware system you're integrating with, but there's definitely room for software first and software only. Anecdote, you could even think about, in I think 10 years from now or 8 years from now, there's going to be F-15s landing in Israel that are the same box from 60 years ago, but it's a whole new plane. And that's where software could get you modernizing and changing the battlefield. And I think we'll see more and more contracts going to software first or software only companies.
That's obviously in our field, you just need to keep going. It's not that you have a shooter that can shoot and then it's done and you can maybe gauge it somewhat with software. There is always new drones, and we always need to adapt our systems to that. And the people who bought hardware from us 3 years ago, 5 years ago, want still to be protected against drones. So we have software-based technology in those systems. So say system could grow as a software service after they purchase the hardware. So we actually do have an ARR in our company. It's like a defense company with ARR. You've got to be kidding us. And no, we have that slide, and it's real, and it's really important. So that's part of it.
So let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, which is API, the Export Institute, or the export regulations. What are your thoughts on API on the panel? Do we think that they're doing a good enough job? Do we think that it's the right type of environment to help startups grow? I can be the bad guy if you don't want to be, but I assume you guys can be as well.
Well, working with they're called DECA in English, right? The Defense Export Control Agency. So they are doing an important job. We understand the need for them, their technology in Israel, and some of that technology is secret, some of that technology is sourced from the Army and from Army experience. And we don't want that ever to be turned against us. So some kind of control has to happen here and to keep the interests of Israel. Having said that, if you want to encourage defense companies, other companies, and the whole ecosystem to grow in Israel, you need to give them access to bigger markets, which are abroad. So what we see is a very blessed movement towards the flexibility that is needed. I think there was an article in Calcalist about a week ago that they are considering lowering or canceling altogether Tzavat Sofen, which is the export control on cryptography.
Archaic one.
Well, so that's a blessed movement, keeping our interests, but still letting companies grow. And we saw that, we saw the cooperation that I think they are going in the right place. We like the way they are working, and we want more of that.
That was so politically correct, but thank you.
I think that you can look at this as a decision of where do you want to incorporate your company, right? And U.S. companies incorporate in Delaware, not because that's where they pay the least taxes. It's because that's where everything is clear-cut. So if you want to be investable, you want your VCs to know what is regulated and what is not. And I think API can improve on that because they have all kind of clauses that you're regulated if you do X, Y, and Z, and everything else that we decide, right? So think about an American investor that wants to invest in you, and they see this, and like that brings uncertainty, right? And you don't want that. So whatever they decide, removing that kind of language will make everyone's life much easier.
I think API and the transformation there is a blessed process, but first of all, there's different ways around it, and obviously, like we got funding, like you said, from the U.S. Army and from the Israeli IMOD, and things are possible. But I think that as a whole, the system or the ecosystem in Israel needs to look at how they open the different bottlenecks. And it's not only export control. It could be better funding vehicles, similar to the SBIR program, where it's a very structured system across all the different forces in the U.S. And sometimes Mafat sees themselves as the Israeli DARPA. But that's not, in fact, always the best thing that you want to be, because these funding opportunities in the U.S. don't all go through the DIU or DARPA. They go directly to the different forces, and it's a very organized phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and taking you all the way to the programs of record. So I think we need to look at how do we help startups as a whole, not only with export control. It's part of the formula.
Nice. So you bring up the U.S. Army there, and I think it's important with this whole conversation with API and export as well, which is that I think that venture dollars, for better or for worse, is a necessary evil in this space. If you want to build a big company, you have to have enough capital in order to think long term and make sure that you're building the company appropriately. The problem that exists is that most of the venture dollars in the world, not just in defense, exist in the United States. They don't exist locally, and they also don't exist in Europe. And so from your perspectives, how do you balance maybe the Zionist duty that you all feel, or Zionist responsibility, to focus on protecting Israel versus maybe the more, I would say, capitalist motivations for shifting to the U.S., but even from day one? First of all, do you even feel that conflict? Does that conflict exist? Maybe it doesn't, and how do you deal with it?
No, I think it does exist. The way we see it is that we're happy that most of the interests between Israel, the U.S., and Europe are loosely aligned, we could call it, and we see it that way, and that solves most of our problems.
There are talks now on expanding Five Eyes to also include Japan, Korea, hopefully Israel. Even as just an observer, but anything on that can really help, bring Israel closer to, the Five Eyes, UCUS part of the world, where the dollars are. But also, we're kind of like facing most of the same threats, right? I put China aside, but everything else is pretty relevant.
So dollars can come from investors, and that's, how do you call it, blessed evil? What we call blessed, but dollars can also come from customers. And that's the ties to the foreign point. If you manage to create a product that you are able to export, then you are exposed to huge markets around. So investment is just one aspect of that, and but once you do have customers globally, you do access those investments. You are able to do that. But you asked about the tension between that and being a Zionist and helping Israel. So we obviously are all Zionists in this table, and we are rewarded with being able to work with the Israeli army or the Israeli defense forces and to help them as well. We need to keep some balance between that and being able to preserve ourselves as a commercial company, because we want to be there also for Israel also next year and the year after that. So we feel it's a tension, but it's never a dilemma. We always want to help the Israeli side.
Great, I like that. It's tension, but it's not a dilemma. I appreciate that. About hiring, do you find that it's either easier, harder, or maybe none of the above to hire talent to defense tech companies today in Israel?
Well, you hire talents mainly through doing really, really great things and interesting things. And sometimes somebody might ask you, well, do you have exit in that space? Most talent will get attached to really exciting technology, to state-of-the-art, to being a leader, to doing really nice stuff. And I also already mentioned how cool it is to see a drone stop in midair, and that your product actually works in a physical environment and does magical stuff over the air. So that's what we use in order to attract talent. There are talents who are looking for, well, we want to have for us a cloud-based state-of-the-art of that direction. We might not be relevant to that on that specific technology, but being able to excite people around your product also applies for defense, especially if you're state-of-the-art and doing some disruptive things.
If you would have asked me the same question before October 7, I would give you a really different answer. Like you could tell the difference. Before the war, it was much harder to recruit good talent. The field entirely kind of felt toxic to some of them, and they didn't want anything to do with it. And then after the war broke, and also after a lot of people had first-hand experience from their reserve duty, they actually started looking for defense tech companies and startups. And we see that on our recruiting. I think the Israeli primes are also seeing that, and they're growing like crazy, right? And it's the same undercurrent that's driving both.
We're a pretty small company, so but I feel like we have the best engineers in the world. But in my mindset, it's not only it's not a problem, I think it became a responsibility, because we're seeing a lot of people leaving the IDF and more responsibility for the next generation of primes and defense companies to develop these capabilities with the highest quality people, even though that the Army is having these challenges keeping these people. So I see it as a responsibility.
Okay, two quick rapid-fire questions. One is an anecdote of 5 years ago when I was already at TLV Partners, but we had met two defense companies or two companies in the space, and both had Ehud Barak on their advisory board. Now, I don't know Ehud Barak personally, and I'm sure he's a fantastic person, but it seemed to me to be more decorative than something that was actually providing value. Do you believe that you need that decorative 4-star general, 3-star general, whatever it might be, at your company, or can you succeed without that?
Okay, we did attract some general. We have the former FAA director and former NASA director on our advisory board. We do not have an Israeli general on our advisory board, but they are door openers and not decorations. We don't consult with them about that specific feature, but we definitely consult with them on what is the right approach to that government agency and what is the language that they need to hear from us in order to be able to understand what we're giving and so on and so forth. So our experience with that is they're not decorative. We are working with them and they're very helpful.
It's kind of like, if you're a cyber company, do you want an American CISO on your advisory board? Yes. So same here.
A little bit of a mix. Like we have Preston, former chief architect of the U.S. Air Force and Space Force, and opening doors on the high level. I think you definitely need the lower level as well, AKA Chad, who's like a major technician, but he's putting together the contracts and allowing you to work and move forward in those first contracts. And then also people that were in our place, a few years ago. Someone like Ray from Tomorrow.io, who got over, I think, over $100 million of funding from the U.S. DoD, helping you with the strategy, how to write those first grants and get those the initial funding and contracts.
Before I conclude, and we'll conclude in a second, are there any questions from the audience for any of the founders here? Yep.
If you will need to invite new company, will it be in defense tech or it's too tough domain and you would like to switch to?
For anybody that didn't hear the question, it was, if you were to start a new company, would you do it in defense, or is it too difficult of a domain?
Every domain has its challenge. I was also in medical devices, and I was also in B2B marketing and also in retail. So it all depends on whether or not I'll have an idea and I'll see a potential and it will be exciting.
Not necessarily, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Do whatever you're passionate about.
Unfortunately, time's up, but you can come and approach us for questions afterwards. And I'll just say to sum up, what makes me, and I think the firm that I work for, TLV Partners, optimistic about the defense, despite challenges that exist, is that there are amazing people like you guys that are dedicating your lives to actually build companies in this space. So, betzlacha to all of you, and we hope you'll continue succeeding.
Toda raba.